What's up, my financially intentional people? I am truly honored to be joined by Tari Vickery, and we are going to be talking about the emotional side of money. Because if you think that money is all about numbers, you are sadly mistaken, because there is so much more to money, and the way that we move and maneuver around money is highly emotional. So I'm excited to talk about this subject. Welcome to the podcast, Tari.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to talking with you and your listeners.
Definitely. And before we get started, can you share a little bit about your background and how you got into the money space?
Sure. I've been in the money space my whole life. I grew up in family businesses. My grandparents had a family business, and my mother and her husband had a separate one. And then my husband and I had a family business together. So from a very, very early age, I was aware of money and the lack thereof. And it actually goes back generationally. My great grandmother was the breadwinner in her family back in the very early 1900s. And her husband left and went out on drinking. And she was left to care for their two children at a time when that just was not done. And I think he must have come home to get money to go back out and drink. But I am guessing, putting pieces together, that she probably was a prostitute to feed her children. And she died of a self-induced coat hanger abortion when my mother was 16. And then my grandmother had two daughters, and her husband left during the Depression to go work in the Civilian Conservation Corps in another state with the idea that he would send money home. And he left his family on somebody else's back porch to sleep, a neighbor's back porch, and was supposed to send money home and didn't. And so my grandmother worked two jobs. She was a school teacher starting early in the morning in rural western Oklahoma, and then worked as a waitress at night. And so my mother was 19 when I was born, and I had a 4-year-old brother. Women and money is part of my DNA and part of my ancestral heritage.
Wow, those are some incredible stories, but very, very hard to hear. Also, the reality of the situation and why so many women are drilled into making sure that they have their own.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've just had this debate with one of my friends about if you had the choice to live on a world where it was only women or a universe where there was only men, 100% of the time men would be, oh, no, thank you. But 90% of the time women would be like, yes, please. And I think it just has a lot to do with trauma and the things that we've had to endure. And it's not because we hate men, it's just because systemically, there have been things that have oppressed us, and we've always just had to overcome so much. And thank you for sharing those stories of how your family was able to overcome such traumatic experiences, even like sex work. Sex work has been one of those things that have been a bridge to some women having financial grounding, and it shouldn't be looked at as such a shameful thing, because a lot of times it was people's only option. What are you going to do? So thank you for sharing that. That was really moving. How did that affect you on your journey?
Very, very much, because growing up in a family business, it's often feast or famine. And because my mother was so young, I grew up at my grandmother's home. I went to her house before school and after school. And I was literally answering a business telephone when I was 8 years old in a pinch. Grandma would run to the grocery store and somebody needed to answer the phone, and I could do it. So my sense of money came from overhearing. We learn about money, whether our parents think they're teaching us or not. And I remember being about 4 or 5 years old, and my mom, she always talked to us about money. She wanted to explain why we could not have all the things she could not give us, that I know she wanted to. but there was not enough money. She didn't have a high school degree because she had to drop out because she'd gotten pregnant at 15. And so consequently, money was always at the forefront from the time I was very young. And I remember a story of a radio jingle saying, dial, dial for a loan. And it was the letters for the word dial. And I said, Mommy, why don't we just dial, dial for a loan if we need money so bad? And bless her sweetheart, she went into a lengthy explanation of having to pay it back and interest and things that were so far beyond a 4-year-old's understanding. But I do appreciate that she was trying to help us understand her situation. But so it was just ingrained. And then back in those days, we went to the post office box to get mail. And we got mail twice a day, if you can imagine. And literally what we ate for dinner depended on whether checks were in the post office box that a customer had sent or didn't after she was in business with her husband, my stepdad. So it was just always part of my life. And I've often said it was scarcity on steroids. And I did not believe there was any way I could ever shift my thinking to abundance. And I have. And that is why I wrote the book on the emotional side of money to help people understand. The subtitle is A Roadmap to Financial Wellness. And I know you deal a lot with wealth, and financial wealth and financial wellness are not necessarily the same thing. There are wealthy people who still have that same underlying core anxiety that I grew up with because maybe they grew up with something similar.
Yeah. Let's talk about that shift. What helped you make that shift for yourself?
Personal growth, attending classes. I attended a class called Get Right with Money by Nona Jordan. And I've now taken this course 3 times because every time I'm in a different place and I learn different things. But that's where it started, was with just an understanding. And it was a spiritual journey as well, of understanding that I actually could love myself. And I did not think I would ever be able to love myself because I just thought there was so much wrong that I could never get it all, quote, fixed. And once I learned to love myself and accept that my core essence is beautiful and I don't need to fix anything. I can improve things, but I'm just fine as I am. That was the beginning of my journey that brought me to a place where then I could feel abundance with money and with other parts of my life.
Thank you for sharing that, Tari. And I just want to validate that because I didn't even learn that loving yourself was a thing until my very late 30s. And when I discovered that, I felt ashamed because I was just like, why didn't I not think of this as a concept? I always just thought, oh, if you think about yourself too much, that's vanity and all these kind of things. But I think it's especially interesting that when we talk about getting right with money, the first thing wasn't what people think. It's because you got to get good with budgeting. It's because you need a spending plan. It's because of these things. No, it's inside. It's getting right with yourself and understanding how to love yourself and knowing that you're enough. Thank you for sharing that because I think a lot of people need to hear that, tied to the fact that you said, being wealthy is not financial wellness. Those two things are not the same thing. There are plenty of people with money that are not right with themselves.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Like a lot of people I know needed to hear that, just like I needed to hear that. And so in starting with that foundation, what has that allowed you to do with your own finances and help other people do?
Professionally, I work with people with their finances, and I've done this for 25 years. And so in the course of that, I have been witness to the anxiety. I work with a number of high wealth individuals, and that's where I learned that exactly what you just said, financial wellness and financial wealth are not the same thing. And I've even had clients invite me to their therapy sessions.
Wow.
And not just one, but to help their therapist understand my perspective of how they're dealing with money is impacting their overall well-being. It goes that deep, that anxiety and that sense of never having enough. I've watched so many clients who think, if only I had this amount of money, then I'd be okay. And they just keep raising the bar. They get that amount of money and then, oh, well, that's retirement money. That doesn't count. I know I said that then, but that's not true today. All of the different reasons they keep increasing that because they're looking for something that they're not going to find bank balance. It's never going to provide the security they're looking for.
Yeah. And so how do you help your clients navigate through that?
We talk a lot. And that is the focus of my book, is the importance of first understanding yourself. How did you get to this place where money gives you literally a stomach ache or a headache or all of the other ailments I've heard clients mention, and they won't open mail? It's very common for people to not open mail as an avoidance tactic. They have the money to pay their bills. I'm not talking about people that don't have the money and it's like they just can't face it. I'm talking about people who have plenty of money to pay it, but it's this emotional piece. And so as a result of watching this fold, how I help them is talking with them about it and helping them get over those hurdles. If it's mail they can't open, I sit with them and open mail with them to help them get beyond that place. But it's the underlying need to understand that I got this way because I learned something. And many, many years ago, I heard Leo Buscaglia, who you may not recognize his name. He was a professor at USC, and he taught a course called Love. And he was doing interviews long before there were things called podcasts. And in one of his interviews, he said, anything that is learned can be unlearned. I found that so powerful that literally decades later, I remember his saying that. And that is what is true with money and with scarcity and with fear and with all of the emotions around money. These things have been learned. We were not born with a fear of money. We've learned it. Maybe we overheard our parents arguing. Maybe we overheard our parents talking about Uncle Harry, who never had two nickels to rub together. And there were other little tidbits of information that as children we picked up on those things. That's how we learned about money. So by focusing on how did I personally get here? Why do I think about money the way I do? Then we can start unraveling that. Because the next step is to be talking to your partner or significant other or important people in your life. And that might be your kids or your aging parents. But all these people that don't talk about money. But you've got to figure out what you think about it and how you feel about it before you can talk to somebody else who probably hasn't thought about what they think or feel about it too. So if you start with a conversation of, I've been thinking about money and I just wonder what you think, without doing the intentional work, I love your word intentional, the work to figure out where you stand and how you got here and what you want to hold on to and what you want to let go of. You can't have a meaningful conversation with someone else because their noise gets all tangled up in your noise and you end up arguing about money rather than having a meaningful conversation.
I just want to say I'm blown away by your work, and also because I feel financial therapist as a term is relatively new, but it sounds like you have been doing this work since the beginning. And I think so many people can benefit from this work. People are always asking me now about, oh, I need a CPA. I'm like, girl, you need a financial therapist. Because again, so many of the issues aren't rooted in the things that people think that they need help with. People think that they need help with their budgets and with investing. And that's why they're not good with money, or because they don't make enough and they need somebody to help them make more money. And this is why they're not where they want to be financially. But at the root of it, it's because of some money trauma, something that was learned that they have to unlearn. And thank you for explaining it like that, because I think that'll resonate with so many people. But the work that you do and have done is so ahead of its time, especially in the finance space, because we're inundated with people that will tell you the reason why you're broke is because you don't know how to invest, or because you don't know how to budget, and because you have debt and all these kind of things. And when we know that that's not true.
That's right. Yes, you beautifully capsulized it. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And from the beginning of how your work started to where you are now, what things you think have evolved in the way that you approach your clients?
I originally was typically with older people, and often it was when a spouse died and the spouse was the one care of finances, or there was a divorce. And it was usually I worked with the wife, and the husband's office had often taken care of the family finances. And so that's where I started. I started with what I call the nuts and bolts of either teaching my clients how to track what they spend and gather their information and what they needed to for taxes and all those nuts and bolts kinds of things. And over the course of 25 years of doing this, I came to understand exactly what I've been describing. That what started out working with those things you're talking about, the budgeting or the spending plan, then it revealed those underlying issues. And I heard so many times, and it gives me a headache. I don't want to talk about money. I know I need to talk about this with you, and I know you need to talk to me to help. I need to provide so you can help me, but I don't want to. It's painful. It truly is excruciatingly physically painful for some people. And again, it's not talked about. Where are people supposed to talk about these things? We grow up getting the underlying message don't around money. Don't think, don't talk, don't feel. Oh, make good financial choices that provide a life of financial security. It doesn't work that way. And it's almost as if sex and money are the two taboo subjects that parents do not want to talk to their children about.
Yeah, it is insane. Like that, we don't want to talk about money, but we're automatically supposed to be good at it. It's just, no, that's not how that works. That is not how that works.
I think the reason parents are hesitant to talk to their kids is their own fear. They have issues around money and they don't want to impart those to their children. And so they just don't talk about it because they don't want to harm them. It's out of that fear of doing that. And you were talking about the evolution. What I'm seeing now is goes the other direction with aging parents. People in maybe 40s, 50s are afraid to find out if their parents have enough money to last the rest of their lives. And am I going to need to help support my parents? Maybe I'm at the peak of my earning years and I have a beautiful life for my family. But if I have to take on my parents and their financial needs, I might not be able to do for my children what I want to be able to do for them. And so that old sandwich generation thing is impacted by money as well as all of the other caregiving and the other issues that created that term.
Yeah, and it's a scary time. It's a scary time, but ignoring it doesn't help the situation. But what you were saying about that fear being visceral, being something that is really, really felt, is so real. A lot of people feel it, and it causes damage physiologically to your body to hold on to that stress. And so many people just normalize that, and it really is shortening lives, that money stress. So it's imperative that this is something that you deal with. Yeah.
And the other thing I think is interesting is I do believe that we come into this world hardwired. I've worked with several families where I work with 3 generations, which is so much fun. The first generation didn't deal with how to handle money, so they didn't teach their kids, and now their kids are young adults. And so to see the evolution through families and to see the artifacts that get carried through those generations is interesting too. But one of the families I worked with had 3 sons, and they were about 10, 12, and 14 when I started working with them. And I love to get kids involved in money. They start to be interested. They start thinking about what they want. And I encourage parents to get them checking accounts as soon as banks will let them. But anyway, this family had the 3 boys, and the parents were divorced, but they were very together in their parenting. And they asked me to meet with the boys and just get them started around financial literacy. So I asked them a lot of questions like, how much is a lot of money? What would you do to get money? Questions that were age appropriate. And so we got the kids all set up. They got a weekly allowance. I worked with the parents to determine what items they would pay for out of their allowance. And so they each got the same amount. And it was fascinating to watch because the youngest, by the time the week would end, he might have 50 cents in his bank account every week without fail. The middle child always had money, and money didn't seem to bother him, but he bought what he needed. He just was almost inherently driven to just be a good steward of his money. And the older son was on the autism spectrum. So he watched his money daily. He would send me texts and this is what I've got, but he was on top of it. And he ended up going to trade school, living on his own, just amazingly functional. But these 3 boys were so close in age. They'd had the same parents growing up. They'd heard the same stories, and yet they approached money so differently. And that's why I realized that that's a sample of one, but it's not the only one I could give you. But I do think that people are hardwired for things to either impact them, things they hear, or they blow it off. Another story, some kids grew up in the same family. Parents were home builders. They went through the 2008 mortgage crisis, had inventory of unsold, unfinished houses, a lot of stress around money. The family had generational wealth. And as they got older, the daughter needed to buy a new car. She had the cash to pay for it. She had it in her savings account. She wouldn't invest because she didn't want to risk losing it. And she went to the car dealer and bought the car, but she was distraught with agony over seeing her bank balance, her savings account balance drop by the amount of money she had just spent on the car. And she and her brother were at their family ski cabin and talking about it. And her brother said, I don't understand why. Why is this such a big deal? And she looked at him like he was crazy and said, you grew up in the same house I did. And he said, yeah, our parents argued over money, but don't all parents argue over money? It just literally rolled off his back. So again, some people are just more in tune. I think it has to do with their own EQ, possibly, emotional quotient. But some people are just a lot more anxious about money than others.
And I think that's a prime example of why personal finance is personal. But also, I love the fact that this family brought you in to help their kids. That is so amazing.
My favorite is working with the kids. I've got one young man who's in his early 30s. I started working with him right out of high school. His grandparents had set up a trust fund, but his mother could not manage money, and she knew that. She was also a client. So she hired me because she said, I have nothing to teach him except bad habits. So she hired me, and we started working on creating his spending plan for his college years. Fortunately, because he had a trust fund that his uncle was the trustee, the uncle said, I will write 1 check a semester. I don't care how much it is. There was plenty of money in the trust fund, but don't come back to me wanting more money before the semester's over. And so we had to create a plan that made sure he had enough money. And we did that through 4 years of college. And then I continued working with him as he became a young adult, bought his first house, actually had enough money left from his trust fund to make his down payment on his house. And I talked to him last week. I love working with young people and watching them evolve, and they feel like my kids.
That is truly a blessing, Tari. That lights me up. I know it lights you up, but that's truly a blessing. But also, it's blowing my mind because in just my limited knowledge and my years of working in the personal finance space, I've never heard of somebody that people hire to help their kids with their finances. It has never been a thing to me. And so you just rocked my world. I talk to my kids about finances like that, but I didn't know that was a thing. That's incredible. But I love the fact that you have been able to see money move through different generations and how that affects, and also how money affects people so differently is so fascinating to watch. And that's why I tell people, like, if you think that there's just one way to deal with your money, you're sadly mistaken, because everybody's experience is different. How they treat money, how they feel about money, all of those things are so different. So there's never going to be one blanket way, one system, one thing that is going to fully cover you. And I love to see that you help people navigate that, especially through generations, through different mindsets, through different, like, dealing with somebody who has come out of that financial crisis, for an example, versus somebody right now that has never really felt a true recession. Totally different mindsets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Tari, this has just been such a fascinating conversation, and you just have such a wealth of knowledge. And again, like I said, you are a pioneer in the space of wellness, financial trauma, and coaching through that mindset around money, and just not the numbers and the dollars and cents of it, really understanding the emotions of it. Just, I want you to share with people how they can get your book, how they can work with you and see all of the works that you have out there.
Oh, thank you. So my book will be published in 7 weeks from tomorrow on May 5th, but it is available for pre-order wherever books are sold. We love to support indie bookstores, as my daughter calls him, Uncle Jeff. But Bookshop, I wasn't even familiar. There's a wonderful website called Bookshop, and then you put in the name of your personal indie bookstore, and they handle the order. So that's one place I want to give a shout out to. But my work is available through, people can find the details of the services I provide. I have a team, a total of 4 of us, and we do a lot of those nuts and bolts things that I was talking about. But my business website is lifemattersfinancialgroup.com. And my book website is Tari K. Vickery author.com. And I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook. I do a weekly talk with Tari on Tuesdays. I love alliterations. And I've been talking about my journey around getting a book published. I actually came to Kauai to write my book 6.5 years ago, and thought I'd be here about 3 to 6 months. And COVID hit, and I got stuck. Oh, gee. And so ended up buying a house, and I live here permanently. But so I talk a lot about the experience of the writing. I finished the writing in about 3 years. And then I really dragged my feet on getting it published. It was very scary to put it out there, to have the rejection, and just ecstatic that She Writes Press, who only publishes women's books, is publishing it. And so it's been quite a journey. And a lot of these stories I'm telling you, it's a book of stories. I want people to feel the freedom to talk about money, but I also want to help them understand how they feel about it. And then at the end of each chapter, I have something to think about. And so it relates to the chapter, but it's questions to ask yourself. And then there's a chapter on partners and money, and one on kids and money and families and money. And on those chapters, I have more questions to not only ask yourself, but maybe to engage your partner or your kids, the other things you might want to ask them as conversation starters.
I love that. I'll definitely be picking up the book. And then I have to ask, is it in audio format as well?
It will be once it publishes. Yes, it is. I've recorded the audiobook. Yes.
Yay. And you have a lovely voice. And I was going to ask you to talk about your background, like your physical background. If you're watching on video, Tari has an amazing green, lush background. She is recording in Hawaii. And I just wanted to briefly touch on, I know you talked about like how you landed there, but you are from California, right? Or you went to Stanford.
That's
I know
right.
that.
I'm originally from Oklahoma. We moved to California so I could go to school as a 40-year-old undergrad. Moved our family of 4. Our daughter was in high school. My kids are 10 years apart. I say we have 2 only children because they're so far apart, but that's why we moved to California. And so I was there for about 27 years before coming here.
Oh my God, it's so lovely there. How was your experience living in Hawaii? How do you like that versus California?
I'm on the island of Kauai, which is extremely quiet. We have no high-rise buildings. We have a 2-lane road that goes around, I think, about 4/5 of the island. There's a fifth of the island that you cannot reach by vehicle at all. It's the real ragged cliffs you often see in pictures of Hawaii. And so it's very slow. Drivers are so kind to each other. I get back to California and the freeway, and about 5 days after that, and I get me out of here, take me home. I honestly feel such a connection, and I feel the island welcomes people or it shuns them. And it's true. It either embraces you, and it has embraced me. And I thank it every day for embracing me and loving me. I can often hear the ocean from my lanai, hitting the rocks and crashing. And of course, the birds, I don't know if you probably can't hear the birds, but they're just, and the roosters and all of the different animals I love.
Thank you so much for sharing that beautiful background with us and that amazing story. Like, I love that. And I love that you were a 40-year-old college student. Like, that is so good. And I think like a lot of times people think that it's too late. And I want to just highlight these 2 things, like to close us out. But a lot of times people think that it's too late. And a lot of times people think that if they only had enough money, all their money issues would be solved. And I think that you just knocked that out the water. Like, that is not a thing. Thank you for clarifying. You got this. And so in all of that, giving people so much hope. And I'm just super grateful I got to meet you and share your story and learn from you. You are a true inspiration. And I really, really appreciate you being on my podcast.
I so appreciate your inviting me. This has been a lot of fun, and I just thank you so much. And thank you for helping get my message out.
Yes, more people need to hear it, and I'm grateful to be able to have the opportunity to do it. So thank you.
You're welcome.